Okay, welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we're looking at something that honestly sounds like it was ripped straight out of a crazy Hollywood movie script, but it is 100% real. We're diving into the absolutely unprecedented collision of the Octagon and the Oval Office, UFC Freedom 250. Let's get right into how entertainment, combat sports, and the highest levels of government are literally merging into this one massive spectacle. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever actually stopped to think about the sheer logistical nightmare of putting a literal cage match on federal property? I mean, you can't exactly just set up a chain link fence on the South Lawn and ring a bell, right? So, how do you legally sanction a professional, high stakes fight at the White House? Well, that was one of the absolute biggest hurdles the planners had to face, and the answer involves navigating some, frankly, very unique legal loopholes. So the date is set for June 14, 2026, and this massive Paramount Plus streaming event marks a super bizarre but very real milestone. We're talking about the first professional sporting event in history to be held at the presidential residence. And it's not just a random Sunday either. The date actually aligns perfectly with Flag Day and, wait for it, the president's 80th birthday. It's totally designed to be this one-of-a-kind immersive experience that just completely shatters the traditional boundaries of where a pro sport can actually happen. But let's back up to that regulatory quirk I mentioned a second ago, because this is where it gets highly technical. Because the White House is federal property, the local D.C. Combat Sports Commission, the guys who usually handle events in the Capitol, they actually don't have any jurisdiction there. None. If they had just run the show without sorting this out, none of these matchups would officially count on the fighters' records. So to make sure these bouts were completely legitimate, the Association of Boxing Commissions, or the ABC, had to step in. They basically acted as an independent third party to officially license and sanction the whole shebang.
And, despite the fact that they are essentially fighting in a very famous backyard, standard combat sports safety protocols are remaining fiercely intact. The promotion absolutely isn't cutting any corners here. They're bringing in their own dedicated medical staff, doing independent weigh-ins, basically doing everything to ensure that industry-leading athlete safety is maintained. So, yeah, it might be a surreal venue, literally the president's backyard, but the regulatory and medical standards are exactly what you'd expect from a world-class arena.
And they definitely need those world-class standards because, guys, the talent stepping onto that lawn is truly elite. Seriously, just look at this lineup. This card is ridiculously stacked with sheer star power. We're talking about two massive championship title fights right at the top of the bill. You've got Ilia Topuria taking on Justin Gaethje and Alex Pereira facing Ciryl Gane. Plus, you throw in massive fan favorites like Sean O'Malley, Michael Chandler, Bo Nickel. It is, without a doubt, a lineup designed to draw the absolute maximum amount of eyeballs possible.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that amidst all this crazy star power, a very specific question started circulating. People were asking, why is Derek Lewis not on the White House card? And get this, that wasn't just some random fan complaining on the internet. That was a direct, personal matchmaking request from the President of the United States himself. Apparently, the president is a massive fan of the heavyweight fighter's larger-than-life personality and his knockout style, and basically said, I want him on the South Lawn. What followed next was literally one of the most chaotic, real-time matchmaking miracles you will ever hear about. Let me walk you through it. First, the president personally asks the promotion's CEO about adding Derek Lewis. Second, the CEO immediately steps away, calls Lewis, who agrees right on the spot. He even says, tell the president thank you. Third, Joe Rogan actually hears about this wild scrambling while he has his headset on during a live broadcast, and he asks if there's an opponent available. And finally, step 4. Josh Honkett, who is literally in the process of stepping into a medical ambulance after a grueling match, gets offered the open slot. And he accepts it right there before the ambulance doors even closed. The entire bout was put together in under an hour. Just insane. So, that last-minute, total adrenaline-fueled edition of the Lewis-Hockett heavyweight bout brings us to the magic number, 7. That is the total number of fights for this entire event. Because of the highly exclusive nature of the White House venue, there is absolutely no undercard. None. It is a tight, highly curated showcase of exactly 7 matchups, which means every single fight has massive, massive stakes. So the crucial point is if we zoom out a bit, there's a much broader strategy at play here. This event is way more than just an entertaining sports milestone. It actually serves as a strategic bridge, connecting the incredibly passionate, highly engaged audience of combat sports with modern political demographics. It is essentially a masterclass in using cultural entertainment to connect directly with voters who are otherwise super hard to reach. It's fundamentally changing how political campaigns approach the media landscape that you and I consume every single day. To truly grasp how this works, we really need to understand a modern cultural demographic that's often called the manosphere, or sometimes the brosphere. Basically, this is a massive, decentralized network made up of modern media influencers, long-form podcast hosts, and digital creators. They command the attention of millions of young men, particularly those under 50, who just feel totally alienated from traditional television and cable news. Fight culture? It turned out to be the absolute perfect vehicle to reach this massive, untraditional voting base.
And the bridge to this demographic was built by some absolute digital heavyweights. We're talking about massive personalities like Dana White, Joe Rogan, the Nelk Boys, and the Paul and Tate brothers, all of whom were heavily involved during the recent campaign trail. They provided unparalleled access to audiences that political campaigns have historically struggled to engage with using your standard run-of-the-mill political advertising.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real-world impact. If we look at the hard data from the 2024 presidential vote, specifically for men under 50, Trump captured 55% compared to Harris at 43%. To put that into perspective, that is a massive 12-point margin in a demographic that was nearly perfectly split just 4 years prior. It just goes to show the sheer power of tapping into digital fight culture.
But, we cannot ignore the giant elephant in the room here. Let's move to and see how this builds into the broader context. Because this ultimate spectacle is taking place amidst incredibly high security, right in the middle of a very tense, ongoing global conflict in Iran. It creates this undeniably jarring reality, right? Hosting a massive celebratory party and sporting event at the absolute epicenter of global political power while a war is actively occurring. This surreal contrast was actually pointed out directly by Joe Rogan himself. He stated, "I know it's going to be very high security and high stress and weird to have a fight at the White House in the middle of a fucking war." And that quote perfectly reflects the cognitive dissonance of the whole event. It really highlights the unprecedented and frankly bizarre nature of throwing a celebratory cage match while the Oval Office is managing heavy, real-world global realities literally just steps away. Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to chew on. When the ultimate sporting spectacle collides so completely with global politics, on the literal lawn of the White House, does it fundamentally change the sport itself, or does it just change the audience watching it? It's a fascinating intersection of entertainment, culture, and power that we have absolutely never seen before. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Let me know your thoughts, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next one.